Hello and welcome to Archfeldor's Hacks with Archfeldor and his amazing hacks. Today I'm going to be doing a video which is not really a hack video at all. It will be either the most interesting or the least interesting video I posted, entirely dependent on your perspective. This video is going to be about how to find your own hacks. Now if you're looking at this video for simple instructions, how to kill raid bosses, this is not that type of video. However, I think for those of you who are a little more patient and more interested in the theory behind what I'm doing, you will find this video very, very useful indeed. Okay, so there we go. So we probably lost about 50% of the audience there, but that's good. Everyone should focus on what they want in life. Okay, so we just wanted to talk a little bit about my background and the type of approach I use to find hacks. Hacks you find yourself, why you should listen to my ramblings on this subject. Hacks you find yourself are far, far better than anyone else's hacks, for the simple reason that you discovered them. It's far more rewarding on an emotional level and a creative level and a personal level. But additionally, there are a number of advantages to hacks that you find yourself, in that if you find a hack, you have total power over whether it's released to the community. You can do that. You can keep it to yourself and profit from it personally. Some people have made hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever from finding their own hacks and exploiting them on a full-time basis. It's not easy, but it is possible. Some people merely do it for their own entertainment, and that is in itself very rewarding. Finally, of course, you can do what I do, and just if you have this massive ego or this pathetic, needy desire for self-gratification and public acclaim, you can post silly videos. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about the type of approach I use to find hacks. Now, the first thing most people tend to do is look for ideas on forums like OwnCore. Chances are you came here from OwnCore. It's where a significant percentage of my audience comes from. And people do post fantastic ideas there. It's a really great community, really lovely people. And the type of hacks you'll see there are the genuine article. Don't, as I did initially, waste your time searching around YouTube for damage hacks or whatever. You will almost always find videos which are 150% scams. If it's possible for something to be 150% scam. Anyway, the type of thing you're looking for is in-depth discussion by people who are not trying to pitch you something. One of the things people tend to make a mistake for is they look for highly professional videos or highly professional articles, or things with great design. It's one of the ironies that the most valuable information is often published in some obscure corner of a website. The immediate advantage of it is not at all apparent. It's often poorly spelled, poor grammar, because it's often just some teenage kid who's come up with a great idea, and no real effort's gone into it, or the presentation. The reason why this often happens, the most valuable information can be found in what seems to be the most unlikely of sources, is that if you think about it intellectually, it has to be that way. Because if you have nothing, if you are selling a scam, then you want to lull as many people as possible into your scam with some amazingly professional video which looks really shiny. You'll suck more people in that way. Now if you have real quality information, you don't need to do any of that shit. Word will get around, people will come to your site, so you don't really care. You want to just shove that information out as fast as possible. So that's the type of source you should be going to. Having said that, there is a level at which looking to see what other people have done can be counterproductive. The reason here is that if you get too much into what people tend to call groupthink, you think too much like other people, you'll never discover anything truly original and spectacular for yourself. But of course, if you have no basis to start with, you will never find anything. So you need to use, in that sense, to almost contradict your mindsets. You need to be thinking, what have people done before? And here's the trick: rather than thinking just what have people done before, you need to be thinking, what if I spin that? What if I do it in a slightly different way? What if Blizzard have put in some fix or some minor alteration to some class or whatever, some new spell? Can I use this idea that maybe way back in Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King? Can I spin that and make it work in some way that no one has ever thought of, including the Blizzard developers? Because it's impossible to consider all the potential permutations. If you think about the number of spells and abilities in the game, all the different NPCs with all their different abilities, the way objects can interact, the way you come in and out of instances, the number of permutations are infinite. And that's something that really gives a lot of hope if you're trying to find exploits. The game is just so vastly complex. There's a theory called the theory of errors, which says the more complex a control system is, and Warcraft is an immensely massive control system, the more immense a control system is, the more errors it will produce. Now, just to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about, say for example, take debuff hacks. I've done a few of those, and the basic premise behind debuff hacks is that something bad happens to you or your pet, and that has some positive property, and you can take that into arena or battleground or PvE or whatever and make good use of it. Is there a spin there beyond just searching for an extra bit of damage? Is it possible, for example, that you might be able to say rack up vengeance on a warrior with some type of debuff? Or is it possible that, say, like a stun, perhaps that stun makes you invulnerable? Is it possible that it may be useful in some specific situation for you or your pet to have invulnerability? Could that give you some huge edge in a particular situation, particular encounter, or more generally? They're all different kinds of possibilities. Say with spell steal, for example, mages have been stealing buffs with spell steal and taking them instances from some other place for ages to get overpowered damage. That's mostly a play that's been shut down. But say for example, what if your warrior, for example, uses spell reflect on a mage and effectively practices spell steal themselves? Can that warrior maybe do things with that stolen spell that the mage couldn't? The commonality between all these potential angles and possibilities is that you're looking for some kind of interesting game mechanic or effect present in a battleground, quest, dungeon or raid, and seeing if you can transfer that effect into some other area of the game with potentially game-breaking consequences. The effects have to be present in encounters Blizzard comes up with simply to keep the game fresh, challenging and interesting. They're aware that those effects can be exploited, so usually anything obvious, for example the aforementioned spell steal buffs, can really be exploited in an obvious manner. However, that still leaves a number of possibilities, many of which have never been considered by anybody. Now, I want to talk about a bit about the dangers of negative thought with this type of thing, because I'm sure a lot of you are watching this and thinking, I'm not smart enough to do this, or this is too difficult, or whatever, and just like to reassure you that I have exactly the same feelings, particularly when I've been searching fruitlessly for something for a long time and I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. It's very dispiriting when you watch the geniuses, you see producing videos like RAOV, Imperius, Votus, there's a number of other names I can't remember offhand, don't take it personally, Wizard Troke here, Master Explorer, where you feel like I can never get to that level. And what I would like to reassure you by saying is that I have exactly those same feelings, but yet I still can come up with some occasionally game-breaking and really exciting hacks that a lot of you seem to benefit from. And in a sense, it's partly because of a lack of knowledge, because I don't really understand things like CRZ. I don't really have much of expertise when it comes to macros. I just cut and paste macros other people use. That's about the limit of my abilities. Stuff like, and the hacking side of the game is just gobbledygook to me. Bear in mind that your lack of knowledge can be an advantage, because it gives you a perspective where you don't know what is and isn't possible, and sometimes you can do the impossible through sheer ignorance, which is a very encouraging thought, I like to think. Now, having said all that, you need to be aware of the fact that you need to network for precisely the reasons I've just mentioned. You're never going to be able to learn everything. Even some of those exploit teams I just mentioned, they have a number of people working on the same thing at one time, because no one could be a specialist at everything. Everyone is always going to be good at one thing, and when you work together, you get the synergy. Awful word, often abused in business circles, but synergy simply means that people working together produce more than the sum of their parts. And that's really essential in the longer term when you're trying to do this sort of thing. You can be a lone wolf to some extent, but you will be, in the longer term, missing out on so much unless you contact other people and work with them. There's always issues about discretion and exposing too much, and I think you find you have to volunteer information to people to some extent and try and win over their trust, or it's not going to work. You really want to be very, very careful when they give you information, that you don't use it in some manner that they will not approve of, because there is no worse feeling than discovering some fantastic play and then finding out that someone else has blown it and the information is no longer valuable and you weren't even accredited. Now, I'd just like to talk a bit more about the type of background I have and the type of mindset you need to uncover exploits. One of the mistakes I think a lot of people make, not just in Warcraft but in life in general, is that they become overly focused on one thing. Now, I have a background in advantage play. That's forms of gambling with an advantage. You may be familiar with card counting at blackjack, or handicapping at sports, or skilled poker play. It's the type of thing I used to do, and in fact I'm still exclusively dependent on for my income. And that gives me a unique perspective into Warcraft. To some extent, the ideas cross over. The type of thinking we use to uncover profitable strategies in the gambling tables can be applied to Warcraft. Now, you probably have a very different background, but you will know something, you will have some knowledge, be it about psychology, mathematics, science, whatever, where just occasionally two ideas will cross over. Often this happens, you're having a conversation about one thing and you think, oh, that's the solution to the other thing. So there's a body of interdisciplinary knowledge you can bring to bear on the finding of exploits. And it's very valuable to do that, because most people are probably not thinking in exactly the same way, and that can lead you to discover things that even a skilled exploiter would not, just because you're looking at things from a different perspective. Okay, so I hope this has been some use to you and given you some interesting ideas to work with. This has been Archfeldor. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and take care.